following are true scary stories found on the subreddit Let's Not Meet. I'll have a link in the description below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. Let's begin. This is a throwaway account I made after discovering this subreddit, and I wanted to share my story, so here it goes. It was about late November in Colorado, and I was about 7 or 8, and my father got the idea of taking us all for a week into the cabin that he was going to rent. My mother thought it was a great idea for me, my sister, my father, and my mother to bond, so that's exactly what happened. We rented the cabin for a few days. We took off school on Friday to get a head start on getting there, which I had no issue with. We got there, and it sure was cold. Well, it was almost December, so I guess it made sense that it was so cold. Anyway, we got all set up and decided where we'd all sleep. We ate dinner, and then we all got set up in bed and were thinking about what we'd do tomorrow. We got there kinda late, so we couldn't do much on the first day. That night, though, I heard noises outside. It sounded kinda like footsteps. I looked out the window and saw nothing, so I figured it must have been an animal. I tried to go back to sleep, then about 15 minutes later I heard it again. I woke my sister up, which she was about 11 at the time, and she heard it as well. We both walked over to the window and saw something out there. We weren't quite sure what it was. We decided it'd be best if it not see us, so we went back to sleep. I had a hard time sleeping that night, so did my sister, but when we eventually woke up, my mother was inside making breakfast, and my father was outside. I asked my mom if I could go outside with my dad. She told me sure, while my sister stayed inside and waited for my mother to finish breakfast. I walked outside and my father was talking to some man, a short, chubby man. He had a shaved head and was wearing a veteran cap. He looked really nervous too for some reason. He was sweating a lot as well, even though it was freezing outside. I walked over to him and my father looked at me and said, "Oh, this is my son," and told him my name. The man looked at me and said, "Nice to meet you, kid. My name's Patrick." He smiled and looked at me. I smiled and greeted him back, and it may have been rude at the time, but I was just a kid, and asked him, "You look kinda scared. Are you alright?" And he kinda coughed and replied, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just went through shell shock. I'm a veteran," he said, as I couldn't tell by the cap he was wearing. He seemed normal then. My father seemed to really like this guy, and I liked him at first too. He told my father he had also rented a cabin with his family, and they were really close to us, so he decided to introduce himself. My father invited him inside for breakfast, and he stayed, and it was normal. I went outside to play after that with my father and Patrick. While outside, I fell and scraped my knee and started crying. My father was inside at the time, a bad time for him to be inside. My mother was calling for him, and he ran inside while I was out there with Patrick. Patrick ran over to me and told me to come with him to his cabin because he had band-aids. I agreed and went with him. I wasn't a very smart kid. I went with Patrick. We talked about what I liked doing, and I told him about the video games that I played and stuff like that. Then things got weird. He asked me what shoe size I was, and how old I am. I don't know what my shoe size is, I told him, but I told him my age. He just kinda chuckled and said something along the lines of, "Good to know." Also, his cabin was nowhere near ours. It was way back. It took about 20 to 25 minutes to walk there. I was tired and there was no point in getting a band-aid anymore, but I still decided to keep going since I had walked so long. We entered the cabin. He told me to go in first, so I did. As soon as I walked in, I realized something. There was nobody in there, no family. I asked him where his family was, and he didn't answer, pretending like he didn't hear. He locked the door, and then I kinda got frightened. He told me, "I'll be right back with your band-aid, kiddo," and he walked into the kitchen and pulled out one from somewhere, and then walked back and told me to have a seat, and he put it on. I sat down and he put it on me. He also held my leg with his other hand and rubbed up and down it and told me, "You're rather muscular, kid. I like that." I kinda got scared and immediately stood up. He asked me what was wrong, and I told him nothing, and that my leg was feeling much better. I then thought my parents must be worried sick about me and I should hurry back. He insisted that I stay a little longer and eat there. I didn't want to, but I was alone, and if I ran I didn't think I could find my way back to my cabin. The door was locked too, so I agreed and decided to eat with him and just get it over with fast. He asked how much I weighed, and I guessed around 73 pounds. He then had a smile go across his face. He nodded and said, "Perfect weight." I asked him perfect weight for what, and he just kept smiling. I was really weirded out and asked him if I could go. He told me no, and that things were just getting started, and I shouldn't miss out on the fun. He He had such a weird tone when he said that too. I then heard a big bang come from the bedroom. It was a closed door. Patrick stood up and looked kinda angry. He walked into the room and shut the door behind him. I then heard him yelling, "Did I fucking tell you could move? No, then stay the fuck where you are. I have fucking company." Or something like that. And then he walked out with a smile on his face and shut the door slowly. "Sorry about that. It was my wife. She's really sick and not allowed to be near visitors today." He was smiling while saying it. I wanted to go. I then looked around the room and noticed there were clothes everywhere, and it was really messy. He must have been living out here. At that moment, his wife walked out of the room.
"I'm hungry,"
she said. He looked pissed. "Get back in there," he said. His wife was extremely pale, and she looked like she'd been crying a lot. She was sniffling and had red circles around her eyes. She looked at me, then walked back into the room. I asked him where the kids were. He didn't answer. He told me he had kid clothes that he wanted me to try on. That was the last straw. I had to get out of that situation, and I didn't know how. I started crying, and then he hugged me and he told me, "It'll be okay, little one. Nothing is going to happen. Just try on these clothes." He walked in the back room. I thought that was the perfect time for me to leave. I unlocked his door and tried to leave as quietly as I could. I didn't care if I got lost anymore. I didn't want to take any more chances with Patrick, if that was even his name. I had a feeling he'd been lying. He lied about having kids, so who knows what else. I was in the woods trying to find my way back. I was still close to his house, close enough to hear shouting. I heard him yelling stuff to his wife, things along the lines of, "Where the fuck did he go?" And, "I knew I shouldn't have left him alone. You probably let him leave." I could have sworn I heard him call her a whore and a bitch a couple times. Then it happened. I stopped in my tracks. I heard footsteps. I went and hid behind a tree and looked in his direction. He was outside and seemed to be looking for me. I was far enough away where I could barely see him, but I could tell he was looking for something. He then stepped out in the forest and I heard him shouting, "Hey kid, it's okay. You can come back now. You don't have to try on the clothes. And I have toys back in my cabin. All you have to do is come back." I then ran. I ran as fast as I could in a straight line in hopes to find somebody in my family. I was running away and I thought I heard shouting, but I didn't stop to hear it. Then after about an hour of running, I saw a cabin, my cabin. I ran to it. My father was outside looking around, looking for me. I ran up to him crying and told him Patrick wasn't a good guy and that he was really weird and he was touching my legs and stuff. My father immediately called the person who rented the cabins, and he had said that nobody else was renting the cabin. My father looked at me and told me never to follow any strangers ever again. We immediately left that day and asked for a refund the next day. The guy renting them out apologized. The man having the cabin rentals called the police, and the police went back there and checked the cabin, and there was nobody back there, not even his wife. His clothes and belongings were still there, is what they told us. Nothing really happened after that. They asked questions and left. They never called us or told us anything ever again. Patrick most likely wasn't his real name, and he probably wasn't a veteran. I just want to know what happened to him and his wife, and how he even got a wife in the first place, and how and why he lived in that cabin. He seemed to have lived there for a while. I guess he left because he figured the police would be coming after him because he didn't rent the cabin, so many questions will never get answered. I'm just glad that it's all over, and I hope that I'll never have to see that cabin man again. About 3 years ago is when this story happened. Me and my cousin Xavier were good buddies, and we usually camped together whenever my dad would travel to Kentucky. One summer, we were camping out. It was dark, around 9:30. We were making s'mores when we heard footsteps out in the bushes. We brushed it off as to being deer or rabbit. We continued roasting marshmallows and making s'mores when the footsteps kept coming closer, and soon we saw a figure. I stared at the figure, and by looking at the shape of it, I could tell it was a man. Everybody was silent until my uncle said, "Hello, sir?" The man was silent, still staring deep at us. "Sir, do you need help?" The man wouldn't speak at all. We kept staring at him until my dad got up and walked towards the man. "Do you need help?" He stopped speaking, walking backwards and almost falling. He started to rush towards me, my cousin, and my uncle. There was a solid silence for 12 seconds when the man in front of us finally broke it. The man pointed at my father and said, "Don't come back." We packed our shit and left right there, spending the night in a motel. The next morning when my uncle asked my dad what happened, my dad responded, "His face was bloody, and it looked like he was fucking decaying right in front of me." I can't camp anymore without worrying about that guy. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I hope to upload a video every day during the week. I probably won't do it this Friday because we have Independence Day in the United States coming up, and I have family coming into town, so I'd like to spend it with them. That being said, I'm going to have a video all the way up till Thursday. I might even backlog one so that way I can put one up for you on Friday. Since I'm getting so much support, it really makes it worthwhile getting all these likes and subscribers. Keeps me motivated, because I do work full-time as well, so this is just a fun hobby that I do. So all the comments, all that really keeps me going. If you guys want more videos, keep that up. I really appreciate it lately. It's been amazing. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.